There are moments in an off-season when everything feels theoretical, when rumors float around like harmless clouds and nothing quite touches the ground. And then there are moments like this, when reality slams the door open and suddenly every decision carries weight, consequence, and urgency. This is one of those moments. Because things have just got very real for the Toronto Blue Jays, and not in a slow, gentle way, but in a way that forces the entire organization to look itself in the mirror. One major signing has fallen, not to Toronto, but the shockwaves from it are rippling straight through the Blue Jays' plans for Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette. Add in a startling development out of New York, and suddenly the entire free agent landscape feels like it's shifting under our feet. So strap in, stay with me until the very end. And if you enjoy this kind of deep, story-driven coverage, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Blue Jays News, because this one matters. Alex Bregman is officially off the board, and with that single signature, the offseason took a sharp turn. 5 years, $175 million, Chicago Cubs. Clean. Decisive. Final. 1 year after failing to land him, the Cubs came back and landed one of the biggest bats available, and they did it with conviction. For Toronto, this was never about losing Bregman directly. The Blue Jays had already pivoted, already chosen a different path, already decided that Kazuma Okamoto at a far more palatable price made more sense for their roster construction. $35 million a year for Bregman was always going to feel excessive from a Jays perspective. But baseball is rarely about just one move. It is about what that move unlocks next. Almost immediately, the next domino threatened to fall, and this one landed uncomfortably close to home. Reports began to circulate that the Boston Red Sox, fresh off missing out on re-signing Bregman, are now turning their full attention to Bo Bichette. That sentence alone should send a chill down the spine of every Blue Jays fan. In the span of a year, Boston has already lost Rafael Devers and now Alex Bregman. Pride, desperation, and ambition make for a dangerous cocktail, and the Red Sox are suddenly staring at a gaping hole in both production and identity. Bo Bichette, a homegrown star, a face of the Blue Jays, suddenly fits their needs far too well. This is where things stop being abstract and start becoming personal. Losing Bo Bichette is one thing. Watching him walk into Fenway Park wearing red is another entirely. This is the nightmare scenario, the one fans whisper about but never want to say out loud. And yet here we are, with credible reports suggesting Boston is ready to go all in. That alone ramps the pressure up on Toronto, because this is no longer just about improving the roster. It is about protecting the soul of the team. As if that were not enough, another report dropped late in the night, and this one came from the Bronx. The Yankees, long assumed to be on track to re-sign Cody Bellinger, have hit an impasse. Negotiations have stalled. Sources suggest New York is now operating under the assumption that Bellinger will sign elsewhere. And when the Yankees change direction, the entire market pays attention. Because if Bellinger is no longer their answer, then suddenly other doors creak open, doors that were previously assumed to be closed. At first glance, this might not seem directly connected to Toronto. But look closer, and the implications are enormous. If Bellinger lands with the Mets or returns to the Dodgers, that removes a major bat from circulation and, crucially, removes a potential suitor from the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. The Blue Jays' pursuit of Tucker has been aggressive, deliberate, and increasingly visible. Players recruiting players. Subtle public sightings. Quiet confidence behind the scenes. And now, almost unexpectedly, the market itself may be bending in their favor. This is where the story becomes fascinating, because free agency is not just about money. It is about timing. It is about leverage. It is about who blinks first. The Yankees reportedly offered Bellinger a 5-year deal at around $30 million per season. In a winter where Bregman just secured $35 million a year, it is not hard to see why Bellinger might hold out for more. Scott Boras, ever the puppet master, thrives in this chaos. And if Boras is pushing, if negotiations are being played out through the media, then every rival front office is watching closely. For Toronto, this creates a narrow but powerful window. If the Yankees truly pivot away from Bellinger and do not immediately redirect that money towards Kyle Tucker, the Jays suddenly find themselves in a stronger position. The Red Sox are fixated on Bo Bichette. The Yankees are distracted, possibly frustrated. The Dodgers appear to be fading from the Tucker conversation. And in that vacuum, Toronto's persistence starts to matter. The Blue Jays have been clear in their intentions, even if they have not been loud. Their pursuit of Kyle Tucker has not wavered. Recruitment efforts have gone beyond formal meetings, extending into personal relationships and quiet persuasion. The message has been consistent. You are wanted here. You are central to the vision. You are not just another bat. And now, with each passing signing elsewhere, the urgency increases for both sides. But urgency cuts both ways. Because while the Tucker path may be opening, the Bichette situation is becoming increasingly volatile. Reports have already linked him strongly to the Phillies, another team willing to spend and ready to compete. Add Boston's sudden interest, and the market around Bo starts to heat up in a way that Toronto cannot ignore. This is where Ross Atkins earns his keep. This is where decisive action separates calculated patience from costly hesitation. There is a doomsday version of this offseason that still exists, lurking at the edges of possibility. In that version, Bo Bichette signs with the Red Sox and Kyle Tucker lands elsewhere. The Blue Jays would still be improved, still competitive, still respectable. But emotionally, symbolically, it would feel like a loss. Letting a superstar homegrown talent leave for a divisional rival without landing an equivalent offensive force would sting in a way numbers alone cannot justify. And yet, there is another version of this story, one that feels increasingly plausible. In that version, the Bregman signing accelerates the market. The Yankees' uncertainty creates hesitation. The Red Sox overcommit elsewhere. And the Blue Jays, having played the long game, finally strike. Kyle Tucker becomes the statement piece, the player who softens the blow of any other departure and signals that Toronto is not retreating, but recalibrating. The irony is that Bregman's deal, hefty as it is, may ultimately help Toronto. It sets a benchmark. It reminds agents and players alike what elite talent commands. And when you compare that figure to what the Jays paid for Okamoto, the logic becomes clearer. Toronto chose flexibility. They chose to keep powder dry. And now, with the floodgates finally opening, that flexibility becomes a weapon. Around the edges of all this drama, there are smaller threads tugging at the fabric of the offseason. Chris Bassett's name has resurfaced, linked to Detroit as the Tigers explore starting pitching options. It is unlikely Toronto brings him back, given their rotation depth, but it is another sign that movement is accelerating. Once the first few big names fall, the rest tend to follow quickly. Baseball off-seasons rarely end quietly. They end in bursts. And that is why this moment feels different. The waiting is almost over. The chessboard is crowded, but pieces are finally being moved. Every report now feels heavier, every rumor more urgent. Bo Bichette could sign in days. Kyle Tucker could follow soon after. Or everything could twist again, forcing Toronto to adapt on the fly. This is the part of the off-season where legacies are shaped. Not player legacies, but organizational ones. How aggressively do you protect your stars? How boldly do you pursue replacements? How comfortable are you with risk? The Blue Jays have already shown a willingness to act. Now they must show a willingness to finish. So as we watch these developments unfold, remember this. The story is not just about who signs where. It is about what those signings say. About ambition. About belief. About whether the Blue Jays truly see themselves as contenders who belong in the same conversation as the sport's biggest spenders. The next move will tell us everything. If you have enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like the video, share it with fellow fans, and subscribe to Blue Jays News so you do not miss what comes next. Let me know in the comments how you feel about the Red Sox circling Bo Bichette, the Yankees stalling with Bellinger, and whether you believe Kyle Tucker ultimately ends up in Toronto. Because one way or another, this offseason is about to deliver its verdict, and the Blue Jays are right at the center of the storm.